Hi, I'm Cailey, a librarian here at Mentor Public Library.
And I'm Meg, also a librarian, and welcome to this week's edition of All Booked Up with Cailey and Meg, where each week we give you different book recommendations related to a specific theme. So this week's theme, we're going to be looking at teen paranormal books. Now these books, in the spirit of Halloween, are going to feature all those creepy characters that you're going to maybe see later this month.
Yes, and all of the books that we're going to talk about today are available here at the library or online with your library card for free through Overdrive or Hoopla.
Absolutely. So Cailey, what's your first teen paranormal book?
Oh, my first book is a little creepy. The first book I have is called Rules for Vanishing by Kate Alice Marshall. And this book is a good, creepy story, and it is told in a really unique way. Teenager Sarah is trying to find her older sister who has been missing for about a year. Their parents think that her older sister Becca ran away with her boyfriend, but Sarah thinks that Becca actually played a dangerous game that has gotten her trapped in another world. So there's a local legend that over 50 years ago, this little girl went missing from Briar Glen Woods. Her brother saw her being led away by a man, but when he tried to follow, the road just disappeared. And since then, she was never heard from. But legend has it that once a year, that road reappears. And anyone brave enough to take this road must follow the rules, play the game, and if they succeed, maybe they'll be returned home, or maybe they will be trapped in this other world forever. Doesn't it sound creepy?
That is chilling. Ooh,
yes.
Okay.
So Sarah is on the hunt for her sister Becca, who she noticed after Becca went missing. She found one of her notebooks, and it contained all of the list of the rules for the game.
Okay.
And she has spent the last year preparing to go in herself to try to find her sister. And now that the time has come, Sarah and 8 of her friends follow the road. But how many, if any of them, will come back out again? And what is incredibly cool about this book is the way it's told.
Yeah.
Instead of your traditional narrative, this book is told through emails, transcripts, interviews, texts, sort of like a found footage kind of thing. So the whole thing gives you sort of a Blair Witch vibe to it, and is just like a fake documentary kind of feel. So it is a really good, creepy, paranormal read to jump into this spooky October.
Wow. Yeah. And the documentary type, Blair Witch is by far the creepiest for me. Like, if you want to scare me, like, just make it seem like totally real. So I definitely understand.
Yeah, if
that.
you make it seem realistic, it's scarier.
It's the worst. Yeah. And then the mentions of the road just made me think of almost like a paranormal Wizard of Oz. Like, ooh, what's on the road? But anyway, that sounds like a really interesting one. So my next one is we're going to be heading into the world of zombies. So it's the first in this is a really acclaimed teen series that was just began by Justina, Ireland, and it's called Dreadnation. So Dreadnation came out a couple years ago. It's the first book. There's actually a second one that's really popular right now that just came out. So if you like this one, definitely check them both out. So it's part zombie thriller, as I mentioned, but also part post-Civil War drama. So the setup for this series is that at the seminal Battle of Gettysburg, instead of the actual battle finishing the way it did in real history, the dead soldiers on the field rose up and started eating both Confederate and Union soldiers. So that's an interesting take. So what this actually ended up happening is that instead of the Union winning, the Confederate and the Union sides just both agreed, hey, we need to join forces and fight these zombies. So that's how the Civil War ended in this world. And then what's really interesting is the author kind of gives a unique spin on how Reconstruction would have happened in this specific context. And in this world, she proposes that there was this combat school that was formed to teach children to fight the zombies, but it was only African Americans and Native American children who were taken, like pretty much kidnapped from their homes and sent to live at these combat schools where they were going to be trained to fight zombies. And our protagonist, her name is Jane McKean. She's a biracial teen who was sent to one of these combat schools. And though she's actually really talented at fighting zombies, she's really good at it, she definitely doesn't want her life boxed into what the combat school tells her life should be. Like quite simply, she just wants to go home and see her mom and just live her own life. But that's just not how this corrupt society is going to let her do that. So she eventually tries to help one of her friends find a missing sister. And in the process, a corrupt mayor sends her to this really creepy survivalist colony called Summerland, where there's this really horrible sheriff who tries to enforce the law in really horrible ways. And zombies begin to show up even in greater numbers in this mysterious colony. So it's kind of a mystery combined with, Walking Dead type survival tale, combined with a really interesting parallel to racial strife and oppression. So she goes into all of that, and it makes for a really refreshing and unique take on this zombie tale. So then the second one is called Deathless Divide, and that's Dreadnation and Deathless Divide by Justina Ireland. So.
Wow, yeah, that sounds like a lot to unpack in a zombie novel.
Oh yeah, seriously, it's very ambitious, but very successful and very, very good.
Awesome, yeah. The next one I have is called A Constellation of Roses by Miranda Asebedo. This is the sort of a companion novel to her first book. So if anyone has read her first book, this book is about Trix, who is a tough teen that has managed on her own since her mother walked out on her. And she has this uncanny ability to pickpocket what she needs, nearly magical, in fact. And she has gotten by just fine on her own until now, but then she slips up and she is caught stealing. Trix is given this choice between going to jail and going to spend time with a family that she has never met, her long lost relatives in Kansas. And faced with jail as the alternative, Trix naturally selects to go to these relatives, even though she doesn't know them, knowing that basically she's just going to give them the slip as soon as she can. So she goes to meet these long-lost relatives in a little town called Roxaw, Kansas. And when she arrives, it's not long before Trix discovers that they too have some nearly magical abilities. Her Aunt Mia is a baker, and her pies seem to cure all that ails people. Her cousin Ember seems to know secrets with just a touch. And her great aunt has this ability to sort of tell the future, reading palms and things. And so maybe it's not your average family that she has walked into. But while she's here, she starts to actually feel like she might belong somewhere. And since she has been on her own for quite some time, and even before that, never really felt like she really fit in anywhere, this is a completely new feeling for her. So this novel probably falls a little more under the heading of magical realism, but it's got magic, and it was too sweet for me not to include. So it's sort of got witchy vibes, this is an inherited thing. It talks about what you kind of are born with, what is passed on from generation to generation, whether you know it or not. And if you've ever seen the movie or read the book Practical Magic, it has a lot of that similar feel to it to me, especially going into a small town, a magical estranged family, strange occurrences, that kind of thing. But it's also ultimately a very sweet story about family bonds. The book does tackle quite a few difficult issues as well. So I'd say it falls in the older teen heading. I'd still classify it as paranormal in a witchy, magical way.
Yeah, and like you said, I really like when they combine like fantasy with, I don't know, like family, or almost like the sense of wanting to belong. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, where it's kind of misfits that, they can become a family, or, finding ones like your own. So I think that's really sweet as well. We can have our paranormal be sweet as well, right? It can be sweet. Why not? Mine definitely falls into the funny category. My last one is called A Werewolf in Riverdale by Caleb Roehrig. And anyone who doesn't know Riverdale is associated with the Archie comics world. So we got Archie Andrews, Betty Cooper, Jughead, Veronica, all the classics, but this is definitely not the Riverdale you may be familiar with reading the comics. It's even different from the TV show. I don't know if anyone's seen the TV show Riverdale. That was kind of a grittier look at the Archie world. This is definitely grittier, but it's also got a paranormal twist. So in Riverdale, something twisted has awoken and is killing its citizens. So this is not a normal Archie comics beginning, but one night after a full bloody moon, Jughead realizes he is the killer. And more than that, he realizes he's a werewolf. So that has some interesting looks at, being a werewolf, but then he has to get on the run, try and keep secrets from his friends. He even has to go on the run from werewolf hunter Betty Cooper. So Betty Cooper is like on the run to get him. So it's just a humorous look. I kind of think it's funny when you characters not normally associated with paranormal are suddenly thrust into that universe. I think it's not a graphic novel, but I think it definitely has arisen in recent years. Archie Comics has come out with the Archie horror comic imprint line. So there's been Vampironica, where Veronica's a vampire, Afterlife with Archie, and those have been we've noticed those have been really popular at the library lately. So I just think they're branching out into more books. So if you're at all interested in that world and Archie, or even if you're not, it's just still a funny, like kind of campy look at horror. So
I think that's a lot of fun. I like the idea of taking these characters that people might be familiar with from the comics or from the show and just throwing them into a completely different situation. And I think it makes it really kind of approachable in a way, because you're already kind of familiar with the characters, but they're going to surprise you.
Yes, exactly.
And I do want to say, I love the fact that we had a huge range with our paranormal choices. We didn't even plan it that way.
Didn't. We're just, come on. We got your picks for you.
All right. That's all we have for today. And what are we doing next week?
Next week, we are similar but a little different. We're going to specifically go into horror. So I don't know whether we want to do classics or we can do some more updated ones as well, but we're going to give you some classic horror stories to get you more in the mood for Halloween. That's all I got.
Kind of keep our creepy vibe going here.
Yes,
exactly. The month of October.
Yes.
All right. Join us next week. Happy reading.
See ya.